Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. Thanks for joining me once again for our everyday watercolor journal ideas series where we're just painting in our watercolor journals as many days as we possibly can. So we have painted so much. I started this journey on trying to fill up a sketchbook or a journal that I started some time ago. And we've painted many of these pages, lots of different subjects. So you will notice as I paint that I jump around a lot. I don't typically focus on one thing over and over again, especially in my journal. I like to experiment and play. And a lot of people think that they're supposed to kind of hone in on one style or one subject matter and really kind of develop their style. Sure, absolutely. And that is definitely something I aspire to in some of my other work. But it's okay to play and to jump around. And that is what I'm doing in here. So I have also received many comments. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave comments. I love to hear from you. And many of the comments that are coming in now are suggestions or recommendations or requests for things to paint in the future in our journal. And I love this because it helps me figure out what you all would like to see, what might keep your attention. And also it helps me kind of branch out and make sure I'm thinking of lots of different things to paint, which I absolutely love. So this is a commenter's recommendation, and many of the most recent paintings are pig, our sheep, our chicken for sure, some landscapes. These have all been recommendations from commenters. So thank you so much. If you have already left a recommendation, it is on a list and we will get to it eventually. And if you'd like to leave a new comment on something you'd like to see in the future, please go ahead and do so. I would love to see those. I will try to get to as many of them as I can. But today we're going to do a landscape. And this person wanted something with water or reflection. So we're going to do a really loose, fun landscape today. I think I'm going to tape out my edges just because, just for fun. You don't have to do this. You can definitely just paint to the edges of your watercolor journal, but sometimes it's nice to create a little border. So I'm just using straight masking tape. This is nothing special. I don't even think this is acid-free tape. Yeah, this is like hardware store masking tape. Just be careful, depending on what kind of journal you have or what type of paper is in there. Some tape can be a little harsh on it and can rip the pages. If you're worried about that, you can go ahead and warm up your tape with a hairdryer or a heat tool if you have one. And it'll peel right off super easy. It won't stick at all. So that just warms up the adhesion. But yeah, this way I'm going to have a little border around my picture today. So I'm going to go ahead and create or paint a very loose kind of landscape. We're going to do lots of wet on wet. I'm going to pull in reflections, but it's just going to be loose trees on the water, like on a bank of some kind. So the first thing I'm going to do to get my paint wet and give it some atmosphere is I'm going to take a little raw sienna. I hope you can see that raw sienna, which is a reddish brown, and a little Payne's gray, and just make this really light kind of brownish color. And then if you have a flat brush here, I have one of these. I'm going to try this. You can just use your regular round brush, but I have this flat kind of 2-inch mop brush. I have to fix this because it keeps bumping around. There we go. I think that's better. So I'm just going to wet kind of the whole thing with a light layer of this color. So burnt sienna, a little Payne's gray. This is still kind of flopping all around. So sorry about that. There we go. And depending on your paper, it might not love the wet on wet technique that much. And definitely go ahead and use your round brush. This was just a really fast way for me to get all of this on here. And I even have this awesome, like another really big oval mop brush. Kind of smooth things out. I love using my mop brushes, but then they like take forever to dry. You have to leave them out for a while, even if you like get lots of the color out of them. So basically I just wet the whole page. So I'm working on a wet page, but I added a little bit of color to it. So I wasn't working completely white on the background. Give it a little atmosphere. And I'm even going to add a little bit more color in, I think. There we go. All right, just it's very, very light, like almost white, but just a very light wash over the top. Let me get some of I have like a bunch of brushes in water over here. Let me just get them out so they're not sitting in there. Okay. There we go. All right, so now I'm gonna paint a tree. What do I got going on here? I have sap green. I want this to be kind of a dark and moody atmosphere. I'm not in a huge rush. I'm letting that dry a little bit. I'm going to do a couple layers on this tree for sure. So I'm using Payne's Gray and Sap Green, kind of mixing them together. And then I might also bring in just a little Quin Gold. You can see those two colors in a few spots in a minute. I don't want it to be too... All right, so I'm going to do where am I going to start on here? I'm going to do something back here. And you can see it's just blossoming. That's fine. So, tree line back here. So this is going to be water in front. I'm going to pull in a little bit of this other color. Right, I'm just going to let that bloom, and you can see it's a little wider, and I tried to taper it a little bit. I've now rinsed off my brush and completely dried it. So I have a very dry brush, and I'm just going to go along the bottom here and pull out some color so I get a straighter line right there. Do you see? And now I'm going to take some of this same color with water on my brush, and we're not done with this. We're going to add a little bit more, but I'm going to pull down shadows. So this side, I keep saying shadows. I'm going to pull down reflections. And then you can also even tilt your paper or page a little bit as you do this. So I'm trying to keep this straight here, and I want there to be like a white line in between. And then I'm going to tilt it and pull this down this way and let the water pull everything down. This part at the bottom dried really quickly down here, so not the best example. Here, let me pull. But no worries, that's why we practice. All right, I'm going to pull some of this out again. I want that nice, brightish water line. And now this is starting to dry a little bit up here. It's still damp, but I'm going to go in and add a little darker color in a few spots. And again, I'm going to take my brush. Actually, I'm going to take, I have a flatter brush. And just pulling some of that down in this direction. All right, so let's also put in a little something over here. I'm going to add a little bit more of my orangey colors, just in a few spots. And then I'm going to go over here. We're going to put something like right in the background. This is very dry up here already. I'm going to go really light. I'm going to square that off on the bottom. And same thing, I'm going to go lighter. I'm going to pull down in this direction. And I'm picking up a little burnt sienna and a little Payne's gray to make a darker brown. I'm just going to add this to the bottom here. Make it a little darker on the bottom. I'm going to let that bleed up in there. I'm going to come back here. And now I'm going to let this dry. All right, and while this is still a little damp, I'm going to experiment a little bit to put in trees. So usually when you texturize the surface with like a scratching motion or something, paint is going to seep into those areas and become darker. So this is still wet, and I'm going to take the back side of my brush and I'm just going to press in some indents for trees, and I can see how like the paint is kind of seeping into those areas and becoming a little darker. Of course, you can just add darker color on top, but this is fun too. And I'm going to go along the line at the bottom here and up here to kind of give it that ground line. And let's see what happens when I add a little more color on top of these. They'll probably get darker in those areas. Yeah, it's almost like a little channel that the paint just starts to gravitate into. I'm curious to see what's going to happen when it dries. And I'm kind of adding all my color in this line and above, so that below it actually looks like it's a little misty. I'm going to take a clean brush and maybe pull out a little color. I feel like I need a smaller brush. But there, pulled out a little color. That's fun. All right, so for our reflection, let's get a little Payne's gray And a little blue, we'll add a little phthalo. Lighten this up a lot. So this is dark, murky blue-gray color. And I'm going to put lines in this direction, trying to keep them parallel, which gives this a little bit of a surface, like wind is blowing across. This over here, I'm going to actually paint in with a very light version of this color. I'm going to paint all the way up here. So now my water area is all wet again, with some darker lines across this way. I am going to, let's get some more green. I'm just going to pull this down one more time for my reflections. So you're just kind of doing a somewhat mirrored version of whatever's above. So it's a little higher over on this side and a little lower on that side, but nothing has to be perfectly matched. So I'm using a dry brush to pull things this way, and then I'm also going to pull out some parallel lines this way. I'm going to put some darker lines over this in a second. Just putting another layer back here. This was very light, which I like. It's so far back and much lighter, but I just felt like it needed to be a little bit darker. All right, let's take some phthalo and Payne's Gray. And I am gonna get, and I'm sorry, I keep switching brushes here and I have not been keeping up. I'm using a size 8 right now, but this is a silver black velvet brush, so it's got a really nice fine tip on it. And I'm just going in this direction to give my water a little surface. All right, I feel like I have to do something in the sky. Let's add, I love these colors, how they're all kind of blending together. Just going to lift out some color down here towards the bottom. So I'm just pulling it out with my damp brush. And gotta do something with the sky. Let's just add, let's get it all wet. Oh, it's a little green now. And I'm just gonna do a Payne's Gray, like drop in. So kind of this gray, misty, dreary day. That's not terrible. There's a lot to be desired, but it's not terrible. We have a big water droplet right here. But very loose. Gotta let it dry. It's a little muddy. I'm gonna let it dry and add a few more details. All right, we're back. Things are dry, and things are fine. Like, they're okay. This is not my favorite loose reflection landscape that I've ever done before. I would definitely do things a little differently next time. But again, I was just playing in my journal, kind of trying experimental things. These lines are a little harsh for me that I did with the back of the brush. Kind of wish I did them in paint because I could soften them, but once you scratch them in, there's no real softening them anymore. So I gotta live with them. I'm gonna put in some more color of this surface color here, these lines. Now that everything is dry and they won't bleed out. They will certainly dry a little bit lighter, but you can use a liner brush for this. But when you do it with this way, you can soften your lines. So you can have a nice, clean, damp brush and just soften things up with a little water if you need to. There, that's a little nicer. I like that. And I'm still getting this reflection. This has lightened up a lot for me. I'm going to add another layer of sap green. I'm going to come in, so I just have a lot of sap green on my brush. I'm going to come in along here. I'm going to take some of my orange. So as it dried, I mean, it made some beautiful textures and shapes and some mistiness. It just lost some of its vibrance and was very subtle and very beautiful, but just I needed another layer. You can see I'm just kind of scrubbing and dancing my brush across the surface. I'm still letting some of this lighter faded area poke up from the background. Let's put on there. That feels better. And this is super, super light, which I think we just need. It can stay light. I don't want to go too much darker, but using watered down versions of our green and our quinacridone, our quin gold, we can just add a little bit more color back here. Just a little, and it's still, we want it to be much lighter. And then same thing with this, some surface tension or some surface texture. I like to add. There we go. All right, this is good. This is great for a sketchbook, for lots of time to play with colors and wet on wet. I actually love the sky, how that came out. This long like line of clouds across, but it's very soft and subtle. All right, let's take off our tape. I am actually going to put just a few back here, just a few vertical suggestions of lines. Things are still pretty wet back here, so they're going to kind of fade and bleed out. That's great because it's so far away we shouldn't really see too much fine detail. There we go. All right, let's dry it and take off the tape and see what we think. All right, here we go. You can see I warmed up the tape before and it did a pretty good job softening everything up. And you may have to go back and heat each piece of tape and remove it as you're heating it if you have really sensitive paper. This paper is pretty awesome. There we go. Oh, I kind of love it. I love the colors. I love the subtlety. I will do another one with reflection that is a little more specific to reflection, but this one was a great experimental day where we just kind of used some simple colors in our palette, And overall, I really like the tone and the feel of it. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you got something out of it. Even if you don't have to paint a perfect picture every time in your watercolor journal, just experiment and kind of learn some new things. Thank you so much. I'm Shayna Cersei. I absolutely adore painting with all of you each and every day. Go get your journals and get to painting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment and check out the description for links to supplies and materials and my social media and Studio Crew Classroom. Thanks, y'all. Take care and happy painting.